Accounting 12, Conceptual Framework and Accounting Standards. Pass 1, Presentation of Financial Statements, Lecture 2. The following are the learning objectives. At the end of these topics, the students should be able to state the basis of financial statement presentation, describe the objective and scope of IAS 1, identify the complete set of financial statements, explain the requirement of fair presentation, know the presentation and disclosure requirements of the different financial statements. Objectives of Pass 1. We have two objectives of Philippine Accounting Standard 1 to describe the basis for presentation of general-purpose financial statements and to ensure comparability both with the entity's financial statements of previous periods and with the financial statements of other entities. Scope of Philippine Accounting Standard 1. Pass 1 applies to all general-purpose financial statements that are prepared and presented in accordance with the Philippine Financial Reporting Standards. Applicable siya sa general purpose. Ano yung general purpose? Those intended to serve users who are not in a position to require financial reports tailored to their particular information needs. Meaning, ito yung financial statements na hindi niya makikater lahat ng needs ng users of financial statements. So, iba naman yung tinatawag natin na special purpose financial statements kasi tailored talaga dun sa particular information needs ng nag-request. For example, yung special purpose financial statements na nire-require ni SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and at the same time, yung mga nire-require ni government or yung pinapasa sa BIR or Bureau of Internal Revenue. Those are intended to meet their particular information needs. However, the general purpose financial statements naman are those intended to serve users who are not in a position to require financial reports tailored to their particular information needs for general users. What are the components of financial statements? So, the complete set of financial statements includes, ano nga ba yung pinag-uusapan natin? Ano yung financial statements? So, a statement of financial position and a statement of profit or loss. Ano yung statement of financial position? Yung statement of financial position, dito natin nakikita si assets, liabilities, and equity accounts. Sa statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income naman, dito natin nakikita yung mga income and expenses ni company. So note that a statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income for the period may be presented as a single statement or as a separate statement kasi statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income to. Pwedeng isahin na lang sila or pwedeng i-present sila separately. Iba si statement of profit or loss, iba din si statement of comprehensive income. So, number 3, a statement of changes in equity. Dito naman makikita yung changes na nangyari sa equity. For example, beginning equity is 100,000. Yung ending equity naging 200,000. Anong nangyari? Anong nadagdag sa equity? Anong nabawas sa equity? So, dito makikita natin yung galaw ng equity ni company. Number 4, statement of cash flows. Sa statement of cash flow naman, from the word cash flows, dito natin makikita yung summary ng outflow and inflow from and to the entity. Number 5, notes comprising a summary of significant accounting policies and other explanatory notes. Yung mga explanation ng mga items na nasa number 1, 2, 3, and 4 nakalagay sa notes to financial statements. So, sa notes to financial statements, nakalagay din dun yung significant accounting policies na ginagamit ni company. Number 6, comparative information prescribed by the standard. Diba dapat si financial statements comparable? So, ito yung comparative information. For example, Yung Statement of Financial Position year 2020, yung comparative information niya, yung Statement of Financial Position last year, 2019. So, ito yung sinasabi na comparative information prescribed by the standard. In addition, an entity must also present a statement of financial position or balance sheet as at the beginning of the earliest comparative period and any of the following. So, ano yung at the beginning of the earliest comparative period? For example, nagpe-prepare tayo ng December 31, 2020 na statement of financial position. Ano yung comparative period? Year 2019. Ano yung beginning ng year 2019? January 1, 2019. Therefore, kailangan din daw natin mag-prepare ng Statement of Financial Position as of January 1, 2019 as a comparative figures or information for the financial statements prepared as of December 31, 2020 and any of the following. So we have these three. When an entity applies an accounting policy retrospectively, meaning retrospective application. For example, nag-change ng accounting policy si company this year. Magkakaroon yun ng retrospective application as if yung accounting policy na yon is ginamit from the very beginning. So, ire-retrospect natin yun. Magkakaroon ng retrospective restatement sa mga amounts last year. So, kailangan i-restate natin. So, magkakaroon ng changes sa comparative information. So, kaya kailangan mag-prepare ng additional statement of financial position. Number 2, when an entity makes a retrospective restatement of items in its financial statements, so may i-restate siya dun sa financial statement niya last year, so kailangan may baguhin dun, so magkakaroon ng restatement. So therefore, kailangan mag-prepare tayo ng comparative figures. Number 3, when an entity reclassifies items in its financial statements. So, discuss natin to further pagdating natin ng higher accounting. 8 general features of financial statements. We have fair presentation and compliance with the Philippine Financial Reporting Standard, going concern, accrual basis, materiality and aggregation, offsetting, frequency of reporting, comparative information, and consistency of presentation. I-discuss natin isa-isa. Fair presentation and compliance with the Philippine Financial Reporting Standards. So note, yung fair presentation requires the faithful representation ng effect ng transaction, other events, and condition in accordance with the definition and recognition criteria for assets, liabilities, income, and expenses set out in the conceptual framework na na-discuss natin last lecture. So note that the application of PFRS with additional disclosure is presumed to result in financial statements that achieve a fair presentation. So yung general rule, pag yung company na yan, nag-comply siya, nag-adhere siya sa Philippine Accounting Standards, meron tayong general assumption that the financial statements prepared by that company is fairly presented. Pass 1 requires an entity whose financial statements comply with IFRS or PFRS to make an explicit and unreserved statement of such compliance in the notes. So, pag ang company nag-adhere, nag-comply sa accounting standard, kailangan magkaroon siya ng explicit and unreserved statement dun sa notes to financial statements. Nakalagay doon that this company comply with the Philippine Accounting Standard or with the Philippine Accounting Standard, explicit and unreserved statement, meaning walang exemption. Lahat sinunod niya. Lahat ng provisions sa accounting standards sinunod niya. Note that financial statements cannot be described as complying with PFRS unless they comply with all the requirements of IFRS, which includes PFRS, the Philippine Financial Reporting Standard, the Philippine Accounting Standard, and the Philippine Interpretation of these accounting standards. So, hindi pwede na magkaroon ng explicit and unreserved statement si company pero hindi niya pala kinomply lahat. Part lang or section lang of the accounting standard ang sinunod niya. So, dapat sundin lahat ng provision. Except na lang kung magkakaroon ng departure. For example, sa 10 na provision, sinunod ni company yung 9. Hindi niya sununod yung isa. So, the company cannot be described as complying with PFRS unless they comply with all. So, kailangan mag-comply siya sa lahat ng requirement of IFRS para masabi niya na yung financial statement niya is nag-comply with the accounting standards. Inappropriate accounting policies are not rectified either by disclosure of the accounting policies used or by notes or explanatory material. Pag inappropriate yung accounting policies, kahit nakadisclose pa yan, kahit alam pa yan ni users of financial statements, hindi yan mare-rectify, hindi matatama yung paggamit ni company ng inappropriate accounting policy. Meaning, yung mali talaga. Yung inappropriate talaga. Kahit nakadisclose pa yan. Inappropriate talaga yan. Unless na lang kung papalitan mo ng appropriate accounting policy. Yung accounting policy na ginagamit mo yon, that is deemed inappropriate for the company. Again, inappropriate accounting policies are not rectified either by disclosure of the accounting policies used or by notes or explanatory material. In extremely rare circumstances, hindi talaga masyadong nangyayari, extremely rare circumstances, management may conclude that compliance with a PFRS or with the accounting standard would be so misleading that it would conflict with the objective of financial statements set out in the framework. In such a case, the entity is required to depart. So, it is not an option for the entity or the company, but it is a requirement. It is required to depart from the PFRS. Bakit ipapa-depart siya sa PFRS? Hindi siya ipapasunod sa PFRS. Kasi nga, kung magko-comply daw siya sa PFRS, magiging misleading yung financial statements. Pag ganito, pag na-judge ni company, na-conclude ni company, ni management, na magiging misleading yung financial statements nila kapag sumunod sila sa PFRS. So, sinasabi ni PAS 1, mag-depart na lang si company sa PFRS requirement na yon. However, kailangan magkaroon siya ng detailed disclosure. Bakit? Anong reason? Anong nature? Anong impact? Bakit nag-depart si company? So, dapat nakalagay doon, bakit magiging misleading si financial statements kapag sumunod si company. So, dapat may explanation sa notes to financial statements. Number 2, going concern. Again, na-discuss natin sa lecture 1 that when we are to prepare financial statements for the company, merong general assumption na si company will continue in operation for a foreseeable future. So, ito yung sinatawag na going concern. The conceptual framework notes that financial statements are normally prepared assuming that the entity is a going concern and will continue in operation for the foreseeable future. So, hindi tayo nag-assume na next year, magko-close na yung operation, matitigil na yung operation, mandi-discontinue na sa operation. So, hindi natin ina-assume na gano'n. Ang ina-assume natin si company magpapatuloy for a foreseeable and definite period of time sa operation niya. PAS 1 requires management to make an assessment of an entity's ability to continue as going concern. Required, meaning the management should make an assessment of an entity's ability to continue as going concern. Okay, so for example, kailangan i-assess na entity, kaya pa ba yung operation? For example, significant losses na ang nangyayari ang na-encounter ni company this past year. So, kailangan magkaroon ng assessments, lalo na pag may mga ganyang factors si company. Kailangan niya i-assess, do the company have the ability to continue as a going concern or not? So, kailangan magkaroon ng assessment si company. If management has significant concerns about the entity's ability to continue as going concern, the uncertainties must be disclosed. For example, wala namang plano mag-close ng operation si company. However, merong mga significant concerns, merong mga uncertainties. For example, may mga companies na masyadong naapektuhan ng COVID-19 pandemic. Dahil doon, humihina yung income nila, nagkakaroon ng losses, and so on and so forth. Madami. So, yung mga significant concern na yun, yung mga uncertainties na yun, na baka maka-apekto sa operation ni company must be disclosed in the notes to financial statements. Okay, again, kailangan gumawa ng assessment ni company kung kaya niya pa ba, ability to continue sa going concern. Ngayon, kung may nakita siyang significant concern or uncertainties, kailangan nakadisclose yun sa notes to financial statements. Ngayon, kung nakakita nga siya ng significant concerns and if the management concludes that the entity is not a going concern, so sigurado na siya that the entity is not a going concern. Ibig sabihin, for example, nag-decide na si company na mag-close na ng operation next year or nag-declare na ng bankruptcy si company. So therefore, hindi na siya going concern. So therefore, si financial statements dapat hindi na prepared on a going concern basis. In which case, ang sabi ni PAS 1 ni Standard, merong mga series of disclosure na required para kay company that prepares their financial statements based on different basis. Kasi, pag prepared on a going concern basis, kailangan lang disclose yung uncertainties na na-identify ni company. Pero pag ngayon, na-conclude na ni management na okay, wala nang ability to continue as a going concern si company. So, therefore, kailangan magkaroon ng disclosures ngayon si entity na magle-liquidate na siya. So, usually, hindi na siya prepared on a going concern basis. Ano ba yung going concern basis? Yung sinasabi ni accounting standards. Ang daming accounting standards. Meron tayong PAS 1, PAS 2, PAS 16. So, lahat yon on a going concern basis yon. Ngayon, pag hindi na siya on a going concern basis, meaning kailangan na natin i-report si financial statements based on another standards para dun sa mga company na not on a going concern basis. So, usually, yung mga assets is nakapresent na on realizable value. So, i-discuss to pagdating nyo ng higher accounting. Deeper with illustrations pagdating nyo ng higher accounting. Accrual basis of accounting. So, PAS 1 requires that an entity prepares its financial statement except for cash flow information using the accrual basis of accounting. So, ibig sabihin, pag nagpre-prepare tayo ng financial statements, ang ginagamit natin, accrual basis of accounting, not the cash basis of accounting. Yung cash basis, ginagamit lang natin siya pag tinitingnan natin yung cash flow information, meaning kailan ba na-receive yung cash, kailan ba pinalabas na ang cash, kailan nagkaroon ng cash inflow, kailan nagkaroon ng cash outflow. Doon, ginagamit natin yung cash basis of accounting. Pero, yung sa pag-prepare natin ng financial statements, ang ginagamit natin, accrual basis of accounting. Ano yung accrual basis? Nagre-recognize tayo ng asset kapag realizable na, nagre-recognize tayo ng income kapag na-earn na, nagre-recognize tayo ng expenses as long as na-incurred na, regardless kung kailan na-receive yung cash or kailan nagbayad ng cash. Example, sa expenses. Okay, naka-receive tayo ng electricity bill, si company. Yung electricity expense, kailangan na i-recognize ni company kahit hindi pa siya nagbayad. Okay? Yung expenses na yun, kailangan pa na i-report ni company sa financial statements kahit hindi pa siya nakabayad kay Socoteco. Okay? So, therefore, magre-recognize si company ng expense, electricity expense, and at the same time, magre-recognize din siya ng liability ng utang niya kay Socoteco. So, another example, sa income. Regardless kung kailan mo na-receive yung cash, as long as na-earn mo na, pwede mo na i-recognize as income mo. For example, si company, engaged siya sa pagbebenta ng mga motor. Ngayon, utang yung mga motor. Pinapautang ni company. Ngayon, may umutang. Okay? Nagkaroon na ng contract. Pumirma na ngayon si customer. Though hindi pa tayo hindi pa natin na-receive yung total consideration. For example, 100,000 yung motor, 10,000 down payment. Hindi ibig sabihin na 10,000 lang yung binayad ni customer, yun lang din yung i-recognize na sales ni company. Nabenta niya na yung motor, however, utang lang nga ni customer, pero yung worth ng motor, 100,000. Therefore, the 100,000 should be recognized as income by the company and not the 10,000 na na-receive niya na cash. Kasi hindi tayo cash basis of accounting, pero accrual basis of accounting. Kasi na-earn na yun ni company, may obligation na si customer na bayaran yung remaining 90,000. So, mangyayari nun, magre-recognize si company ng receivable na 90,000, magre-recognize din siya ng cash na na-receive na down payment of 10,000, and i-recognize niya yung sales niya na 100,000. Materiality and aggregation. Ano yung materiality and aggregation? Each material class of similar items must be presented separately in the financial statements. And the similar items may be aggregated only if they are individually immaterial. So, ibig sabihin nito, pag material class of similar items, dapat nakaseparate siya since material nga siya. For example, sa inventory, lahat ng similar items, isang line item yan sa financial statements. For example, yung inventory versus the machines. Yung lahat ng machines pwedeng naka-aggregate yan since similar class lang sila. Okay, material class of similar items. Machines must be presented separately from the inventory since they are material. Hindi rin naman sila pareho ng nature. So, and then, they are both material as to the nature ng asset. So, therefore, dapat presented separately si inventory tsaka si machines. So, next, for the similar items naman, may be aggregated only if they are individually immaterial. So, kung hindi naman masyadong mahalaga sa company, so pwedeng yung dissimilar items i-aggregate na lang sa pag-present sa financial statements. Examples ng dissimilar items, if they are individually immaterial, so they are aggregated, yung total na lang yung pinapresent sa financial statements. For example, may mga land na hindi naman masyadong same lang naman sila ng gamit or use, for the operation lang naman sila, then presented siya as one line item sa financial statements. Yung sinasabi naman natin kasi na material class of similar items, ibig sabihin, merong warrant siya ba na pwede siya presented separately. For example, dun sa land. So, merong material class. Yung land kasi pwede siyang maklasify as inventory. And at the same time, pwede din siyang maklasify as property, plant, and equipment. Makaklasify siya as inventory kapag si company involved sa buying and selling of lands or real estate. Pero makaklasify din siya as property, plant, and equipment kapag ginagamit lang si land sa operation or dun lang nakatayo or nakabuild si company building. So, therefore, classified siya as property, plant, and equipment. So, naka-classified siya as land talaga, like any other non-current assets. Samantalang pag involved si company in real estate, meaning binebenta mo talaga, inventory mo yung land, so therefore classified siya as inventory. So ngayon, pag material class of similar items, though they are the same, they are similar items, but each class dapat must be presented separately in the financial statements. However, again, those dissimilar items, they are aggregated and presented as one line item in the statement of financial position. Pwede rin naman siyang i-disaggregate, meaning presented separately, pero pwedeng sa notes to financial statements na lang. Offsetting. Ano naman yung offsetting? Assets and liabilities and income and expenses may not be offset unless required or permitted via PFRS. So, hindi pwede, for example, na meron kang utang kay Ana, and then may utang si Ana sa'yo. For example, ang utang mo kay Ana is 50,000. Then, may utang si Ana sa'yo na 100,000. So, meaning, merong net asset ka na 50,000. Since may utang lang ako na 50,000, pero si Ana may utang sa akin na 100,000, therefore, meron na akong net liability na 50,000. Yun lang yung present ko sa financial statements. Hindi pwedeng ganun. Hindi pwedeng i-offset. So, kailangan nakapresent yung 50,000 na liability mo kay Ana, and then nakapresent din yung receivable mo na 100,000 kay Ana. So, the same with the income and expenses. It may not be offset unless ni-require siya ni PFRS or permitted by a PFRS. So, may mga items na ganyan na madidiscuss natin throughout the discussion of financial accounting topics. Number 6, frequency of reporting. There is a presumption that financial statements will be prepared at least annually. So, kahit walang financial statements na na-issue monthly, quarterly, as long as meron financial statements for a year, at least annually, at least sa isang taon, merong isang financial statements na na-issue si company. So, if the annual reporting period changes, however, pag sinabing at least lang naman yun. So, pwede pa rin na mag-prepare si company ng monthly reports or semi-annual financial statements. Yun yung tinatawag natin na interim financial statements, less than 1 year na financial statements. So, if the annual reporting period changes and financial statements are prepared for a different period, the entity must disclose the reason for the change and state the amounts are not entirely comparable. So, for example, yung company, present niya yung financial statements longer than 1 year or shorter than 1 year. Pag example, yung government naglabas ng ordinance or nag-issue ng command na kailangan ipasarado si company, hindi pa natapos yung taon. September pa lang. So, therefore, 9 months pa lang. So, since pinapasarado na siya, for example, may hindi kinomply si company. So, therefore, yung annual reporting period niya nag-iba, and the financial statements are prepared for a different period. So, the entity must disclose the reason for the change. Sabihin niya, kasi agad-agad na pinaasikaso ni government na kailangan mag-close yung operation ng company. Hanggang September 30 na lang yung operation, kailangan na ganito, ganyan. So, and then, number 2, state na amounts that are not entirely comparable. Hindi siya entirely comparable since this year, nag-prepare ka ng 9 months financial statements, last year nag-prepare ka ng entire 1 year. So, the amounts are not entirely comparable. Another example is, kumbaga, nagkaroon ng problema, nag-declare ng bankruptcy December si company. So, for this year, yung operation niya hanggang July na lang, and yung July hanggang July is January to July is for liquidation purposes na lang yun, kaya nag-ooperate si company. So, therefore, meron changes sa period ng pag-prepare natin ng financial statement. So, again, pag may nangyari na mga ganito, na pag nag-iba, yung period, naging more than 1 year or less than 1 year, except na lang dun sa mga interim, yung karaniwan talagang ini-issue na financial statements ni company. For example, nag-issue talaga siya ng monthly, okay lang yon. Pero for example, yung reporting ni entities, annually talaga, then ngayon, nag more than 1 year or nag less than 1 year siya, kailangan, number 1, disclose the reason, and number 2, state that amounts are not entirely comparable. Number 7, comparative information. Pass 1 requires that comparative information be disclosed in respect of the previous period for all amounts reported in the financial statements, both in the face of the financial statements and in the notes unless another standard requires otherwise. So note that an entity is required to present at least 2 of each of the following primary financial statement. Bakit at least 2? At least 2 kasi nga merong comparative information. For example, number 1, Statement of Financial Position, year 2020. Kailangan merong comparative information yon ng year 2019 na Statement of Financial Position. Next, number 2, Statement of Profit or Loss and Other Comprehensive Income. Number 3, separate statement of profit or loss. Diba, sabi natin kanina, itong statement of profit or loss, pwede siyang presented separately or combined statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. Number 4, statement of cash flows. Number 5, statement of changes in equity, at least 2 ha. And related notes for each of the above items, at least 2 kasi nga, including the comparative information. In addition, the following information must be displayed prominently and repeated as necessary. Number 1, the name of the reporting entity and any change in the name. And preparing the financial statements, kailangan nasa heading ng financial statements yung pangalan ni company. For example, ABC Company. Number 2, whether the financial statements are group of entities or individual entities. So, dapat nakalagay doon. Pag group of entity, group of ABC Company. Ganon. Number 3, information about the reporting period. Kung for December 31, 2020, yun dapat nakalagay doon sa heading. Statement of Financial Position, for example, as of December 31, 2020. Next, number 4, the presentation currency. So, dapat nakadisclose din na in thousands, in Philippine peso. So, dapat nakalagay kung anong currency nakapresent si financial statements. Number 5, the level of rounding used. So, for example, round off to the nearest peso, thousands, or millions example. So, dapat nakalagay siya sa heading ng financial statements. Number 8, consistency of presentation. Ano yung consistency of presentation? So, the consistency of preparation, meaning consistent, yung pag-present ng mga items in the financial statement. The presentation and classification of items in the financial statement shall be retained from one period to the next unless a change is justified either by a change in circumstances or requirement of a new PFRS. So, for example, sinasabi ni PFRS na si inventory classified as ganito. So, therefore, sundin natin yan. Pero pag next year, for example, sinabi ni accounting standard, merong revision sa accounting standard, din sinabi, dapat si inventory naka-classify na siya as ganito or ganyan. Basta either required, pag na-require kasi na accounting standard, kailangan talaga sumunod si companies sa accounting standard. Or by a change in circumstances. For example, Yung inventory, yung land, for example, yung company is involved sa buying and selling of land. So, dapat si land ngayon naka-classify as inventory. So, dapat kung ang classification niya inventory last year, dapat ang classification din ni land this year is inventory also. So, merong consistency in the preparation of the financial statements. However, if there is a change in circumstances, okay lang. For example, yung land last year, syempre, binibenta mo yun in the normal operations. Naghahanap ka ng customer nun. So, kaya, kinlassify siya as inventory. However, ang nangyari this year, for example, ang nangyari this year is hindi mo na siya ibebenta, hindi na siya held for sale. Ang ginawa mo, yung land, ginamit mo siya as property na patatayuan mo ng bagong office building. So, therefore, hindi na siya inventory kasi hindi mo na siya ibebenta, di ba? So, therefore, mag-change yung classification ni land. Okay lang yung ganun. Hindi ibig sabihin na pag yung land na inventory last year is kinlassify mo as property, plant, and equipment ngayon, wala nang consistency sa presentation. Again, that change can be justified by a change in circumstances. Since nag-change yung gamit ni land, so therefore, mag-change din yung classification niya. So, okay lang. Or kaya, yung requirement ng new PFRS. Merong requirement si new PFRS na si ganitong item last year is kailangan i-classify this year as another item. So, okay lang kung meron change sa classification if it is mandated by a new accounting standards. Current and non-current classification. So, we are done with the 8 general features of the financial statements. So, current and non-current classification. Sa financial statements, meron tayong tinatawag na current assets, non-current assets, current liability, non-current liability. Ano yung current and non-current classification? So, an entity must normally present a classified statement of financial position separating current and non-current assets and liabilities unless presentation based on liquidity provides information that is reliable. Ano yung current assets? Current assets are assets that are, number 1, expected to be realized in the entity's normal operating cycle. Pag sinabi kasing current asset, ito yung mga asset na for short-term and not for long-term purposes. For example nga, sabi na number 1, expected to be realized in the entity's normal operating cycle or held primarily for the purpose of trading. Yung ibebenta mo siya or bibilhin, buying and selling. Number 3, expected to be realized within 12 months after the reporting period. Ibig sabihin, for example, sa asset, etong asset na to mabebenta mo naman within 12 months after the reporting period. So therefore, classified siya as current assets. Number 4, if it is cash and cash equivalents, therefore, maka-classify siya as current assets. All other assets are non-current. Yung definition kasi ng non-current asset sa past 1 is residual. Kung hindi siya current asset, edi non-current asset siya. For the current liabilities naman, those are expected to be settled within the entity's normal operating cycle. And normally, yung operating cycle ni entity is 12 months or equivalent to 1 year. Number 2, held for purpose of trading. Number 3, due to be settled within 12 months for which the entity does not have an unconditional right to defer settlement beyond 12 months. Ano ibig sabihin nito? For example, nag-prepare tayo ng financial statement December 31 this year. May utang tayo na payable within 1 year after December 31. And wala tayong right na i-defer or beyond 1 year pa ang pagbayad. Therefore, it should be classified as current liabilities. Again, yung definition natin ng liabilities sa lecture 1. At is a present obligation. There is a probable outflow. So, pag sinabi nating liabilities, ibig sabihin utang. So, kung yung utang mo, kailangan bayaran within 12 months from the preparation of the financial statements. Therefore, it should be classified as current liabilities. The same with the current assets then actually. For example, inventory. Inventory is classified as current assets. Bakit naka-classified siya as current asset? Kasi usually yung inventory, held for trading siya eh. Binili mo talaga sa inventory para ibenta. And usually, nabebenta mo siya next year or next month or next period. So, usually 12 months, marirealize mo na, makaka-realize ka na from the inventory. So, example, sa inventory, nag-prepare si company ng financial statement as of December 31 this year. So, ngayon, si inventory, bakit siya naka-classify as current assets? Kasi marirealize natin yung proceeds, makaka-realize tayo ng benefits from the inventory within 12 months after the reporting period. Siyempre, yung inventory, mabibenta rin naman next year. So, therefore, expected to be realized within 12 months, therefore, presented siya as current asset. And held primarily for the purpose of trading din siya, then presented as current assets. So, may mga receivable naman tayo ng long term. Ano yung example ng non-current asset na sinasabi dito? Yung mga non-current asset, residual, ibig sabihin, not for the purpose of trading, cannot be realized in the entity's normal operating cycle, cannot be realized within 12 months. For example, may receivable tayo, pero payable pa yung receivable, meaning to be collected pa after 5 years. So, hindi natin siya makakolekta next year. So, therefore, it is not realizable within 12 months or within the normal operating cycle. So, pag ganun, ibig sabihin, sa receivable should be presented as non-current assets as long as it will not be realized in the entity's normal operating cycle, it is not for the purpose of trading, or it is not expected to be realized within 12 months after the reporting period, yung time na prepare natin si financial statements, or it is not a cash and cash equivalents. Kasi nga, general rule yung cash and cash equivalents, realized na yan eh. Ibig sabihin, anytime pwede yung gamitin ng entity. So, therefore, presented yan kaagad as current assets. Unless restricted. Kasi kung restricted, hindi kaagad pwedeng gamitin ni company. Therefore, classified siya as non-current assets. Concept of profit or loss and comprehensive income. So, ano yung profit or loss? Yung profit or loss is defined as the total income less expenses excluding the components of OCI. Yung normal formula, paano i-compute yung profit ni company? So, total income minus total expense, that is the profit. Yung other comprehensive income naman is defined as comprising items of income and expense, including reclassification adjustments that are not recognized. Income and expenses pa rin sila, pero hindi sila na-recognize sa profit or loss as required or permitted by other PFRS. So, nadami pa tayong accounting standard na madadiscuss throughout the discussion of conceptual framework and at the same time throughout the discussion of intermediate accounting. So, may mga standard kasi, dinadiscuss pa lang natin yung past one. So, may mga standard, other standard kasi, na nagre-require sila ng classification ng items of income and expense as an other comprehensive income. Meaning, kina-classify siya as other comprehensive income and not as part of the profit or loss. So, mas madadiscuss natin to pag dumating tayo sa higher accounting. Total comprehensive income. So, ngayon, mag-focus muna tayo sa theory. So, the total comprehensive income is the sum of the profit or loss and the other comprehensive income. So, pag pinlas natin to, equals to the total comprehensive income. So, the total comprehensive income is defined as the change in equity during a period resulting from transactions and other events other than those changes resulting from transactions with owners and their capacity as owners. The change in equity, ano ba yung change in equity? Ito yung equity, yung capital natin. Etong equity kasi nadadagdagan to ng additional investments, nababawasan ng distribution or withdrawal, and nadadagdagan ng total comprehensive income. So other than those changes resulting from transaction with owners and their capacity as owners, so other than those and additional investment and distribution to owners or withdrawals, so yung change in equity pertains to the total comprehensive income or loss. Again, sa changes in equity kasi, ano yung makaapekto sa equity? Additional investments or distribution of the owners. So, other than those, yung makaapekto pa sa equity is the total comprehensive income kasi additional to sa equity. Or pag meron tayong total comprehensive loss, deduction to siya sa equity. For you to know the format, the correct format, the proper format of the financial statements, the statement of financial position, the comprehensive income or the statement of comprehensive income, the statement of cash flow, and the statement of changes in equity. So take note of this assignment. Research for a sample copy, soft copy of financial statements of existing companies in the Philippines. Look for a copy and then be familiar with the format of the financial statements. And kindly send the sample soft copy of their financial statements to me. So that would be all. This is the end of lecture 2. Thank you. God bless.